Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is a recitation of To Badi Gokadao, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. This week is portion Mattot, which includes from Torah, Parsha Mattot, which is Bereshit 30, verse 2 a 32, 42. From the Chandogya Upanishad, it is Kanda Ocho, Kanda Ocho, chapter 4. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Atma Samyama Yoga Hymn, numero 6. From the Tao Te Ching, it is chapter 56 a 57. From Menke, it is chapter 22. From the Digha Nikaya, it is the Agana Sutta, numero 27. From the Dhammapada, it is the Sukhavagga, numero 15. From the Gospels, it is John, chapters 15 a 16. And from the Quran, it is Surah Al-Waqiah and Surah Al-Hadid, which are numero 56 and 57, and also from the Souls of Black Folk, chapter 1. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah wabha. Dao ke dao fe cheng dao. Min ke min fe cheng min. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos de qui es in celle santificato nomen tuum. Vahe Guru Sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'revai Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, barei pori agafim. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Sivamastu savajikatehim, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitatam. Vagabiyam. Hakwaba upendo na amani. Fikiri nesalami. Chindadam permen, libavamim, womanjekam. Ubuntu shabono fakithka. Shishem, Kamosanida, Domo Arigato, Pelama Yellow Waka Toka Doka Shingun, Gomanigan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata Jamya Yata Afnami. Madom, Aho, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Torah. Parsha Mattot, Bemidbar 32 a 32, 42. Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes of the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing Elohim has commanded. If a man makes a vow to Elohim or makes an oath to prohibit himself, he shall not violate his word. According to whatever came out of his mouth, he shall do. If a woman makes a vow to Elohim or imposes a prohibition upon herself whilst in her father's house in her youth, if her father heard her vow, or her prohibition which she has prohibited upon herself, yet her father remains silent, all her vows shall stand, and any prohibition that she has imposed upon herself shall stand. But if her father hinders her on the day he hears it, all her vows and her prohibitions that she has imposed upon herself shall not stand. Elohim will forgive her because her father hindered her. But if she is betrothed to a man with her vows upon her, or by an utterance of her lips which she has imposed upon herself, and her husband hears it but remains silent on the day he hears it, her vows shall stand, and her prohibition which she has imposed upon herself shall stand. But if her husband hinders her on the day he heard it, He has revoked the vow he has revoked the vow she had taken upon herself, and the utterance which she had imposed upon herself, and Elohim will forgive her. As for the vow of a widow or a divorced woman, whatever she prohibited upon herself will remain upon her. But if she vowed in her husband's house or imposed a prohibition upon herself with an oath, and her husband heard and remained silent and did not hinder her, all her vows shall stand, and every prohibition she imposed upon herself shall stand. If her husband revokes them on the day he hears them, anything issuing from her lips regarding her vows or self-imposed prohibitions shall not stand. Her husband has revoked them, and Elohim shall forgive her. Any vow or any binding oath of self-affliction, her husband can either uphold it or revoke it. However, if her husband remains silent from day to day, he has upheld all the vows and prohibitions she has assumed. He has upheld them since he remained silent on the day he heard it. If he revokes them after having heard them, he shall bear her iniquity. These are the statutes which Elohim commanded Moshe concerning a man and his wife, a Pharaoh and his daughter in her youth, whilst in her Pharaoh's house. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, Take revenge for the children of Israel against the Midianites. Afterwards you will be gathered to your people. So Moshe spoke to the people, saying, Arm from amongst you men for the army, that they can be against Midian, and carry out the revenge of Elohim against Midian. 1,000 for each tribe, 1,000 for each tribe. From all the tribes of Israel you shall send into the army. From the thousands of Israel, 1,000 was given over for each tribe, 12,000 armed for battle. Moshe sent them, the 1,000 from each tribe, to the army, them along with Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the Kohen, to the army, with the sacred utensils and the trumpets for sounding in his possession. They mounted an attack against Midian, as Elohim had commanded Moshe, and they killed every male. And they killed the Midianite kings upon their slain, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba. The 5 kings of Midian, and Balaam the son of Beor, they slew with the sword. The children of Israel took the Midianite women and their small children captive, and they plundered all the beasts, their livestock, and all their possessions. They set fire to all their residential cities and their castles. They took all the booty and all the plunder of man and beast. They brought the captives, the plunder, and the booty to Moshe and to Eleazar the Kohen, and to the entire community of Israel in the camp in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. Moshe, Eleazar, the Kohen, and all the princes of the community went out to meet them outside the camp. Moshe became angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, who had returned from the campaign of war. Moshe said to them, Did you allow all the females to live? They were the same ones who were involved with the children of Israel on Balaam's advice to betray Elohim over the incident of Peor, resulting in a plague amongst the congregation of Elohim. So now kill every male child, and every woman who can lie intimately with a man you shall kill. And all the young girls who have no experience of intimate relations with a man you may keep alive for yourselves. And you encamp outside the camp for 7 days. Whoever killed a person or who touched a corpse shall cleanse himself on the 3rd and 7th day, both you and your captives. All garments, leather articles, any goat product, and every wooden article shall undergo purification. Eleazar the Kohen said to the soldiers returning from battle, This is the statute that Elohim commanded Moshe. Only the gold, the silver, the copper, the iron, the tin, and the lead, whatever is utilized in fire, you shall pass through fire, and then it will be clean. It must, however, also be cleansed with sprinkling water, and whatever is not utilized in fire, you shall pass through water. You shall wash your garments on the 7th day and become ritually clean. Afterwards you may enter the camp. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, Take account of the plunder of the captive people and animals, you together with Eleazar the Kohen and the paternal leaders of the community. And you shall divide the plunder equally between the warriors who went out to battle and the entire congregation. And you shall levy a tax for Elohim from the soldiers who went out to battle, 1 soul out of every 500, from the people, from the cattle, from the donkeys, and from the sheep. You shall take from their half and give it to Eleazar the Kohen as a gift to Elohim. From the half belonging to the children of Israel you shall take 1 part out of 50 of the people, of the cattle, of the donkeys, of the sheep, and of all animals, and you shall give them to the Levites, the guardians of the Mishkan of Elohim. Moshe and Eleazar the Kohen did as Elohim had commanded Moshe. The plunder, which was in addition to the spoils that the army had spoiled, consisted of 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys. As for the people of the women who had no experience of intimate relations with a man, all souls were 32,000. The half that was the portion of those who went out to battle. The number of sheep was 337,500. The tax to Elohim from the sheep was 675. 36,000 cattle, of which the tax to Elohim was 72. 30,500 donkeys, of which the tax to Elohim was 61. 62,000 people, of which the tax to Elohim was 32 people. Moshe gave the tax which was a gift to Elohim to Eleazar the Kohen, as Elohim had commanded Moshe. And from the half allotted to the children of Israel, which Moshe had divided from the men who had gone into the army, the community half consisted of 337,500 sheep, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 people. Moshe took one part out of 50 from the half of the children of Israel, the people and the animals, and gave them to the Levites, the guardians of Elohim's sanctuary, as Elohim commanded Moshe. The officers appointed over the armies, thousands, the commanders of thousands, and the commanders of hundreds approached Moshe. They said to Moshe, your servants counted the soldiers who were in our charge, and not one man was missing from us. We therefore wish to bring an offering for Elohim. Any man who found a gold article, be it an anklet, a bracelet, a ring, an earring, or a body ornament, to atone for our souls before Elohim. Moshe and Eleazar the Kohen took all the gold articles from them. The total of the gift of gold which they dedicated to Elohim amounted to 16,750 shekels. This was from the commanders of the thousands and the commanders of the hundreds. The soldiers had seized spoils for themselves. Moshe and Eleazar the Kohen took the gold from the commanders of the thousands and hundreds and brought it to the tent of meeting as a remembrance for the children of Israel before Elohim. The descendants of Reuben and Gad had an abundance of livestock, very numerous, and they saw that the land of Yazer and the land of Gilead, and behold, the place was a place for livestock. The descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben came, and they spoke to Moshe and to Eleazar the Kohen and to the princes of the people, the princes of the community, saying, Atarot, Divon, Yazer, and Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliale, Sebam, Nebo, and Bayon. The land that Elohim struck down before the congregation of Israel is a land for livestock, and your servants have livestock. They said, if it pleases you, let this land be given to your servants as a heritage. Do not take us across the Jordan. Thereupon Moshe said to the descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben, shall your brethren go to war whilst you stay here? Why do you discourage the children of Israel from crossing over to the land which Elohim has given them? This is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. They went up to the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, and they discouraged the children of Israel from crossing into the land which Elohim has given them. The anger of Elohim flared on that day, and Elohim swore, saying, none of the men from the age of 20 years and over who came out of Egypt will see the land that I swore to Abraham, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov, for they did not follow me wholeheartedly, except for Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, and Yehoshua the son of Nun, for they followed Elohim wholeheartedly. The anger of Elohim flared against Israel, and Elohim made them wander in the desert for 40 years, until the entire generation who had done evil in the eyes of Elohim had died out. And behold, you have now risen in place of your fathers as a society of sinful people, to add to the wrathful anger of Elohim against Israel. If you turn away from following Elohim, Elohim will leave you in the desert again, and will destroy this entire people. They approached him and said, we will build sheepfolds for our livestock here, and cities for our children. We will then arm ourselves quickly and go before the children of Israel until we have brought them to their place. Our children will reside in the fortified cities on account of the inhabitants of the land. We shall not return to our homes until each of the children of Israel has taken possession of his inheritance. For we will not inherit with them on the other side of the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance has come to us on the east bank of the Jordan. Moshe said to them, if you do this thing, if you arm yourselves for battle before Elohim, and your armed force crosses the Jordan before Elohim until Elohim has driven out Elohim's enemies before Elohim, and the land will be conquered before Elohim. Afterwards you may return, and you shall be freed of your obligation from Elohim and from Israel. And this land will become your heritage before Elohim. But if you do not do so, behold, you will have sinned against Elohim, and beware of your sin, which will find you. So build yourself cities for your children and enclosures for your sheep, and what has proceeded from your mouth you shall do. The descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben spoke to Moshe, saying, your servants will do as my master commands. Our children and our wives, our livestock and our cattle will remain there in the cities of Gilead. But your servants will cross over, all who are armed for combat before Elohim for the battle, as my master has spoken. Moshe commanded Eleazar the Kohen and Yehoshua the son of Nun, and all the paternal heads of the tribes of the children of Israel concerning them. Moshe said to them, if the descendants of Gad and Reuben cross the Jordan with you armed for battle before Elohim, and the land is conquered before you, you shall give them the land of Gilead as a heritage. But if they do not cross over with you for battle, they shall receive a possession amongst you in the land of Canaan. The descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben answered, saying, We shall do as Elohim has spoken to your servants. We shall cross over in an armed force before Elohim to the land of Canaan, and then we shall have the possession of our inheritance on this side of the Jordan. Moshe gave the descendants of Gad and the descendants of Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sichon, the king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land together with its cities within borders, the cities of the surrounding territory. The descendants of Gad built Dibon, Atarot, and Aroer, and Atrot, Shaphan, Yazer, and Yogbeha, and Bet Nimrah and Bet Haran, fortified cities and sheepfolds. The descendants of Reuben built Heshbon, Eliale, and Kiryataim, and Nebo and Balmeon, their names having been changed, and Sibmah, and they were called with the names of the cities they built. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and conquered it, driving out the Amorites who were there. Moshe gave Gilead to Machir, the son of Manasseh, and he settled in it. Yair, the son of Manasseh, went and conquered their hamlets and called them the hamlets of Yair. Nobah went and conquered Kenat and its surrounding villages and called it Nobah after his name. Chandogya Upanishad, Kanda 8:4. The self is a dam, a separating boundary for keeping these worlds apart. This dam is not passed by day and night, by old age, death, and grief, or by benevolent and evil deeds. All evils turn back from it, for the world of Brahman is free from all evil. Therefore, having reached this dam, he who is blind ceases to be blind, he who is miserable ceases to be miserable, he who is afflicted with disease ceases to be afflicted. Therefore, having reached this dam, the night becomes day, for the world of Brahman is lighted once for all. That world of Brahman belongs to those who realize it by means of continence, brahmacharya. For them there is freedom in all the worlds. Bhagavad Gita, Atma Samyama Yogahe. Shri Krishna says, He who does the work he ought to do and does not seek its fruit, he is a sannyasi and he is a yogi, not he who does no work and maintains no sacred fire. Know that what they call renunciation is the same as yoga or pandava, for one who has not renounced his desire can never become a yogi. For a sage who wants to attain yoga, action is said to be the means, but when he has attained yoga, serenity is said to be the means. When a man has no attachment to the objects of the senses or to works, and when he has wholly renounced his will, he is said to have attained yoga. Let a man be lifted up by his own self. Let him not lower himself, for he himself is his friend, and he himself is his enemy. To him who has conquered himself by himself, his own self is a friend, but to him who has not conquered himself, his own friend is hostile like an external enemy. He who has conquered himself and is serene in mind is constantly absorbed in the Supreme Self, alike in heat and cold, pleasure and pain, and honor and dishonor. He is said to be a steadfast yogi, whose heart through knowledge and realization is filled with satisfaction, who, having conquered his senses, never vacillates, and to whom a clod, a stone, and gold are the same. He who has equal regard for well-wishers, friends, and foes, for those who are related or indifferent to him, for the impartial and the malicious, and even for the righteous and the sinful, he stands supreme. A yogi should always try to concentrate his mind, retiring into solitude and living alone, having subdued his mind and body and got rid of his desires and possessions. In a clean spot, having fixed his seat, a firm seat, neither too high nor too low, and having spread over it kusha grass, and then a deerskin, and then a cloth. And sitting there, he should practice yoga for the purification of the self, restraining the activities of his mind and senses, and bring his thoughts to a point. He should sit firm, holding his body, neck, and head erect and still, and gaze steadily at the tip of his nose without looking around. Completely serene and fearless, steadfast in the vow of a brahmachari, disciplined in mind, ever thinking of me, he should sit in yoga regarding me as his supreme goal. Keeping himself ever steadfast in this manner, the yogi of subdued mind attains the peace abiding in me, the peace that culminates in nirvana. Yoga is not for him who eats too much, nor for him who eats too little. It is not for him, O Arjuna, who sleeps too much, nor for him who sleeps too little. For him who is temperate in his food and recreation, temperate in his exertion at work, temperate in sleep and waking, yoga puts an end to all sorrows. When the well-controlled mind rests in the self alone, free from longing for objects, then is one said to have attained yoga. As a lamp in a windless place does not flicker, that is the figure utilized for the disciplined mind of a yogi practicing concentration on the self. That in which the mind, restrained by the practice of concentration, rests quiescent, that in which, seeing the self through the self, one rejoices in one's own self, that in which one knows the boundless joy beyond the reach of the senses and grasped only by the understanding, that in which, being established, one never departs from reality, that on gaining which one thinks there is no greater gain, and wherein established one is not moved even by the heaviest of sorrows, let that be known as yoga, which is severance from the contact of pain. It is to be practiced with perseverance and with an undaunted mind. Renouncing entirely all the desires born of the will, drawing back the senses from every direction by strength of mind, let a man little by little attain tranquility with the help of the buddhi, armed with fortitude. Once the mind is established in the self, he should think of nothing else. Let him withdraw the fickle and unquiet mind from whatever causes it to wander away, and restore it to the control of the self alone. Supreme bliss comes to the yogi whose mind is completely tranquil, and whose passions are quieted, who is free from stain, and who has become one with Brahman. Thus, making his self ever steadfast, the yogi, freed from sins, easily enjoys the touch of Brahman, which is exceeding bliss. With a heart concentrated by yoga, viewing all things with equal regard, he beholds himself in all beings, and all beings in himself. He who sees me everywhere, and sees everything in me, to him I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. He who, having been established in oneness, worships me, dwelling in all beings, that yogi, in whatever way he leads his life, lives in me. Him I hold to be the supreme yogi, O Arjuna, who looks on the pleasure and pain of all beings as he looks on them in himself. Arjuna says, this yoga, which you, O Madhusudana, have declared to be characterized by evenness, I do not see how it can long endure, because of the restlessness of the mind. For the mind of Krishna is restless, turbulent, powerful, and obstinate. To control it is as hard, it seems to me, as to control the wind. Sri Krishna says, doubtless, O mighty Arjuna, the mind is restless and hard to control, but by practice and by detachment, O Sunakunti, it can be restrained. Yoga is hard to attain, I think, by a man who cannot control himself, but it can be attained by him who has controlled himself and who strives by right means. Arjuna says, a man who is endowed with faith but not with steadfastness, and whose mind has wandered away from yoga, what end does he gain, O Krishna, having failed to obtain perfection in yoga? Fallen from both, unsupported and bewildered in the way leading to Brahman, does he not, O mighty Krishna, perish like a riven cloud? You should completely dispel, O Krishna, this doubt of mine, for no one but you can destroy such a doubt. Sri Krishna says, O Partha, there is no destruction for him either in this world or the next. No evil, my son, befalls a man who does benevolence. The man who has fallen away from yoga goes to the worlds of the righteous. Having lived there for unnumbered years, he is reborn in the home of the pure and the prosperous. Or he is born in a family of yogis rich in wisdom. Verily, such a birth is hard to gain in this world. There he comes in touch with the knowledge acquired in his former body of the Kurus, and strives still further for perfection. By that former practice alone he is led on in spite of himself. Even he who merely wishes to know of yoga rises superior to the performer of Vedic rites. A yogi striving diligently is purified of all sins, and becoming perfect through many births reaches the supreme goal. The yogi is greater than men of austerities, greater than men of knowledge, greater than men of action. Therefore be a yogi, O Arjuna. And of all yogis, the one who worship me with faith, his inmost self abiding in me, him do I hold to be most closely united with me in yoga. Dao Te Ching, 56 and 57. 56. Those who know do not talk. Those who talk do not know. Close the mouth, shut the doors, blunt the sharpness, unravel the knots, dim the glare, mix the dust. This is called mystic oneness. They cannot obtain this and be closer. They cannot obtain this and be distant. They cannot obtain this and be benefited. They cannot obtain this and be harmed. They cannot obtain this and be valued. They cannot obtain this and be degraded. Therefore, they become honored by the world. 57. Govern a country with upright integrity. Deploy the military with surprise tactics. Take the world with non-interference. How do I know this is so? With the following. When there are many restrictions in the world, the people become further impoverished. When people have many sharp weapons, the country becomes further chaotic. When people have many clever tricks, further strange things occur. The further laws are posted, the further robbers and thieves there are. Therefore, the sage says, I take unattached action, and the people transform themselves. I prefer quiet, and the people right themselves. I do not interfere, and the people enrich themselves. I have no desires, and the people simplify themselves. Menke, chapter 22. Menke says, it is not to be wondered at that the king is not wise. Suppose the case of the most easily growing thing in the world. If you let it have one day's genial heat and then expose it for 10 days to cold, it will not be able to grow. But it is but seldom that I have an audience of the king, and when I retire there come all those who act upon him like the cold. Though I succeed in bringing out some buds of benevolence, of what avail is it? Now chess playing is but a small art, but without his whole mind being given, and his will bent to it, a man cannot succeed at it. Chess Chi is the best chess player in all the kingdom. Suppose that he is teaching two men to play. The one gives to the subject his whole mind and bends to it all his will, doing nothing but listening to chess Chi. The other, although he seems to be listening to him, has his whole mind running on a swan which he thinks is approaching, and wishes to bend his bow, adjust the string to the arrow, and shoot it. Although he is learning along with the other, he does not come up to him. Why? Because his intelligence is not equal. Not so. Menko says, I like fish, and although he is learning along with the other, he does not come up to him. Why? Because his intelligence is not equal? Not so. Menke says, I like fish, and I also like bear's paws. If I cannot have the two together, I will let the fish go and take the bear's paws. So I like life, and I also like righteousness. If I cannot keep the two together, I will let life go and choose righteousness. I like life indeed, but there is that which I like further than life, and therefore I will not seek to possess it by any improper ways. I dislike death indeed, but there is that which I dislike further than death, and therefore there are occasions when I will not avoid danger. If amongst the things which man likes there were nothing which he liked further than life, why should he not utilize every means by which he could preserve it? If amongst the things which man dislikes there were nothing which he disliked further than death, why should he not do everything by which he could avoid danger? There are cases when men by a certain course might preserve life, and they do not employ it, when by certain things they might avoid danger, and they will not do them. Therefore men have that which they like further than life, and that which they dislike further than death. They are not men of distinguished talents and virtue, only who have this mental nature. All men have it. What belongs to such men is simply that they do not lose it. Here are a small basket of rice and a platter of soup, and the case is one in which the getting them will preserve life, and the want of them will be death. If they are offered with an insulting voice, even a tramper will not receive them. Or if you first tread upon them, even a beggar will not stoop to take them. And yet a man will accept of 10,000 zong without any consideration of propriety or righteousness. What can the 10,000 zong add to him? When he takes them, is it not that he may obtain beautiful mansions, that he may secure the services of wives and concubines, or that the poor and needy of his acquaintance may be helped by him? In the former case, the offered bounty was not received, though it would have saved from death. And now the emolument is taken for the sake of beautiful mansions. The bounty that would have preserved from death was not received, and the emolument is taken to get the service of wives and concubines. The bounty that would have saved from death was not received, and the emolument is taken that one's poor and needy acquaintance may be helped by him. Was it then not possible likewise to decline this? This is a case of what is called losing the proper nature of one's mind. Menko says, benevolence is man's mind, and righteousness is man's path. How lamentable is it to neglect the path and not pursue it, to lose this mind and not know to seek it again. When men's fowls and dogs are lost, they know to seek for them again, but they lose their mind and do not know to seek for it. The great end of learning is nothing else but to seek for the lost mind. Menko says, here is a man whose fourth finger is bent and cannot be stretched out straight. It is not painful, nor does it incommode his business, and yet if there be any who can make it straight, he will not think the way from Chin to Chu distant to go to him, because his finger is not like the finger of other people. When a man's finger is not like those of other people, he knows to feel dissatisfied, but if his mind be not like that of other people, he does not know to feel dissatisfaction. This is called ignorance of the relative importance of things. Menke says, anybody who wishes to cultivate the tong or the zi, which may be grasped with both hands, perhaps with one, knows by what means to nourish them. In the case of their own persons, men do not know by what means to nourish them. Is it to be supposed that their regard of their own persons is inferior to their regard for a tong or zi? Their want of reflection is extreme. Menke says, there is no part of himself which a man does not love, as he loves all, so he must nourish all. There is not an inch of skin which he does not love, and so there is not an inch of skin which he will not nourish. For examining whether his way of nourishing be benevolent or not, beneficial or not, what other rule is there but this, that he determined by reflecting on himself where it should be applied? Some parts of the body are noble, and some ignoble, some great and some small. The great must not be injured for the small, nor the noble for the ignoble. He who nourishes the little belonging to him is a little man, and he who nourishes the great is a great man. Here is a plantation keeper who neglects his wu and jia, and cultivates his sour jujube trees. He is a poor plantation keeper. He who nourishes one of his fingers, neglecting his shoulders or his back, without knowing that he is doing so, is a man who resembles a hurried wolf. A man who only eats and drinks is counted mean by others, because he nourishes what is little to the neglect of what is great. If a man fond of his eating and drinking were not to neglect what is of further importance, how should his mouth and belly be considered as no further than an inch of skin? The disciple Gongdu says, all are equally men, but some are great men and some are little men. How is this? Menko replies, those who follow that part of themselves which is great are great men. Those who follow that part which is little are little men. Gongdu pursues, all are equally men, but some follow that part of themselves which is great, and some follow that part which is little. How is this? Menke answers, the senses of hearing and seeing do not think and are obscured by external things. When one thing comes into contact with another, as a matter of course, it leads it away. To the mind belongs the office of thinking. By thinking, it gets the right view of things. By neglecting to think, it fails to do this. These, the senses and the mind, are what heaven has given to us. Let a man first stand fast in the supremacy of the nobler part of his constitution, and the inferior part will not be able to take it from him. It is simply this which makes the great man. Menke says, there is a nobility of heaven and there is a nobility of man. Benevolence, righteousness, self-consecration, and fidelity with unwearied joy in these virtues, these constitute the nobility of heaven. To be a gong, a qing, or a da fu, this constitutes the nobility of man. The men of antiquity cultivated their nobility of heaven, and the nobility of man came to them in its train. The men of the present day cultivate their nobility of heaven in order to seek for the nobility of man, and when they have obtained that, they throw away the other. Their delusion is extreme. The issue is simply this, that they must lose that nobility of man as well. Menko says, to desire to be honored is the common mind of men, and all men have in themselves that which is truly honorable, only they do not think of it. The honor which men confer is not benevolent honor. Those whom Zhao the great ennobles, he can make mean again. It is said in the book of poetry, he has filled us with his wine, he has satiated us with his benevolence. Satiated us with his benevolence, that is, satiated us with benevolence and righteousness. And he who is so satiated consequently does not wish for the fat meat and fine millet of men. A benevolent reputation and distant reaching honor fall to him, and he does not desire the elegant embroidered garments of men. Manko says, benevolence subdues its opposite just as water subdues fire. Those, however, who nowadays practice benevolence do it as if with 1 cup of water they could save a whole wagon load of fuel which was on fire, and when the flames were not extinguished, were to say that water cannot subdue fire. This conduct further greatly encourages those who are not benevolent. The final issue will simply be this, the loss of that small amount of benevolence. Manko says, of all seeds, the best are the 5 kinds of grain. Yet, if they be not ripe, they are not equal to the tea or the bai. So the value of benevolence depends entirely on its being brought to maturity. Manko says, Yi, in teaching men to shoot, made it a rule to draw the bow to the full, and his pupils also did the same. A master workman, in teaching others, utilizes the compass and square, and his pupils do the same. Dignakaya. The Aganya Sutta, 27. Thus have I heard. The Exalted One was once staying near Savatthi in the East Park at the mansion of the Moor of Megara. Now at the time Veseta and Bharadvaja were passing their probation amongst the brethren, designed to become bhikshus. Then at eventide, the Exalted One, having arisen from his meditations, had come down from the house and was walking to and fro in the open air in the shade of the house. Now Veseta saw this, and on seeing it he told Bharadvaja, adding, Let us go, friend Bharadvaja, let us approach the Exalted One, for perchance we might have the benevolent fortune to hear from the Exalted One a talk on matters of doctrine. Even so, friend Bharadvaja made reply. So Veseta and Bharadvaja went and approached the Exalted One, and having saluted him, they walked after him as he walked to and fro. Then the Exalted One said to Vaseta, You, Vaseta, being Brahmins by birth and family, have gone forth from a Brahmin family, your home, into the homeless life. Do not the Brahmins blame and revile you? Yea, verily, Master, the Brahmins do blame and revile us with characteristic abuse, copious, not at all stinted. But in what words, Veseta, do they so blame you? The Brahmins, Master, say thus, the Brahmin class is the best. But in what terms, Veseta, do the Brahmins blame and censure you to this extent? The Brahmins, Master, say thus, only a Brahmin is of the best social grade, other grades are low. Only a Brahmin is of a clear complexion, all the complexions are swarthy. Only Brahmins are of pure breed, not they that are not of the Brahmins. Only Brahmins are genuine children of Brahma, born of his mouth, offspring of Brahma, created by Brahma, heirs of Brahma. As for you, you have renounced the best rank and have gone over to that low class, to shaven recluses, to the vulgar rich, to them of swarthy skins, to the foot-born descendants. Such a course is not benevolent, such a course is not proper. Even this, that you, having forsaken that upper class, should associate with an inferior class, to wit, with shaven friar folk, menial, swarthy of skin, the offscouring of our kinsmen's heels. In these terms, Master, do the Brahmins blame and revile us with characteristic abuse, copious, not at all stinted. Surely, Veseta, the Brahmins have quite forgotten the past, the ancient lore, when they say so. On the contrary, the Brahmanis, the wives of Brahmins, are known to be fertile, are seen to be with child, bringing forth and nursing children. And yet it is these very womb-born Brahmins who say that Brahmins are genuine children of Brahma, born from his mouth, his offspring, his creation, and his heirs. By this they make a travesty of the nature of Brahma. It is false what they say, and great is the demerit that they thereby earn. There are these 4 classes, Vaiseta: nobles, Brahmins, tradesfolk, and workpeople. Now here and there a noble deprives a living being of life, is a thief, is unchaste, speaks lies, slanders, utilizes rough words, is a gossip, or greedy, or malevolent, or holds wrong views. Thus we see that qualities which are unvirtuous and considered to be so, which are blameworthy and considered to be so, which ought not to be sought after and are so considered, which are unworthy of an Aryan and are so considered, quality sinister and of sinister effect discountenanced by the wise, are to be found here and there in such a noble. And we may say as much concerning Brahmins, tradesfolk, and work people. Again, here and there, a noble abstains from murder, theft, inchastity, lying, slandering, gossiping, greed, malevolence, and false opinions. Thus we see that qualities which are and are considered virtuous, inoffensive, unexceptional, truly Aryan, benign, and of benign effect, commended by the wise, are to be found here and there in a noble. And we may say as much concerning each of the others, Brahmins, tradesfolk, and work people. Now seeing Veseta that both bad and benevolent qualities blamed and honorable respectively by the wise are thus distributed amongst each of the four classes, the wise do not admit those claims which the Brahmins put forward. And why? Because Veseta, whoever amongst all these four classes becomes a bhikshu, an arahat, one who has destroyed the deadly taints, who has lived the life, has done which was to be done, has laid down the burden, has attained his own salvation, has destroyed the fetter of rebirth, and has become free because he has perfected knowledge. He is declared chief amongst them, and in virtue of a dharma, a standard, and not irrespective of a dharma. For a dharma, Veseta is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. The following Veseta is an illustration for understanding how a dharma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. King Pasenadi of Kosala is aware that the Samana Gautama has gone forth from the adjacent clan of the Sakyas. Now the Sakyas are become the vassals of King Pasenadi. They render to him homage and respectful salutation. They rise and do him obeisance and treat him with ceremony. Now just as the Sakyans treat King Pasenadi of Kosala, so does the king treat the Tathagata. For he thinks, is not the Samana Gautama well born? Then I am not well born. The Samana Gautama is strong, I am weak. He is attractive, I am not comely. The Samana Gautama has great influence, I have but little influence. Now it is because the king honors a dharma, reveres a dharma, regards a dharma, does homage to a dharma, holds sacred a dharma, that he renders homage and respectful salutation to the Tathagata, rising and doing him obeisance and treating him with ceremony. By this illustration may be understood how dharma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. You Veseta, who differing all of you in birth, in name, in clan, and family, have gone forth from home into the homeless life, may be asked, who are ye? Then do ye reply, we be Samanas, who follow him of the sons of the Sakyans. He Veseta, whose faith in the Tathagata is settled, rooted, established, and firm, a faith not to be dragged down by recluse or Brahmin, by Deva or Mara or Brahma or anyone in the world. Well may he say, I am a veritable son of the Exalted One, born from his mouth, born of the Dhamma, created by Dhamma, heir of Dhamma. And why? Because Veseta, these are names tantamount to Tathagata, belonging to Dhamma, again and again belonging to the highest, and again one with Dhamma, and again one with the highest. There comes a time, Veseta, when sooner or later, after the lapse of a long period, this world passes away. And when this happens, beings have mostly been born in the world of radiance, and there they dwell, made of mind, feeding on rapture, self-luminous, traversing the air, continuing in glory, and thus they remain for a long period of time. There comes also a time, Veseta, when sooner or later this world begins to re-evolve. When this happens, beings who had deceased from the world of radiance usually come to life as humans, and they become made of mind, feeding on rapture, self-luminous, traversing the air, continuing in glory, and remaining thus for a long period of time. Now at that time all had become one world of water, dark and of darkness that maketh blind. No moon, no soleil appeared, no stars were born, no stars were seen, nor constellations, neither was night manifest nor day, neither months nor half months, neither years nor seasons, neither female nor male. Beings were reckoned just as beings only, and to those beings Veseta, sooner or later, after a long time, earth with its savor was spread out in the waters. Even as a scum forms on the surface of boiled milky rice that is cooling, so did the earth appear. It became endowed with color, with odor, and with taste. Even as well-made ghee or pure butter, so was its color. Even as the flawless honey of the bee, so sweet was it. Then Veseta, some being of greedy disposition, said, Lo, now what will this be? And tasted the savory earth with his finger. He, thus tasting, became suffused with the savor, and craving entered into him. And other beings, following his example, tasted the savory earth with their finger. They, thus tasting, became suffused with the savor, a craving entered into them. Then those beings began to feast on the savory earth, breaking off lumps of it with their hands. And from the doing thereof, the self-luminance of those beings faded away. And their self-luminance faded away, the moon and the soleil became manifest. Thereupon star shapes and constellations became manifest. Thereupon night and day became manifest, months, 2.5 months, the seasons and the years. Thus much then Veseta did the world evolve again. Now those beings Veseta, feasting on the savory earth, feeding on it, nourished by it, continued thus for a long, long while, and in measure as they thus fed, did their bodies become solid, and did variety in their comeliness become manifest. Some beings were well favored, some were ill favored, and herein they that were well favored despised them that were ill favored, thinking, we are further comely than they are worse favored than we, and whilst they through pride in their beauty thus became vain and conceited, the savory earth disappeared. At the disappearance of the savory earth they gathered themselves together and bewailed it. Alas for the savor, alas for the savor. Even so now, when men have gotten a benevolent savor, say, ah, the savor of it, ah, the savor of it. They do but follow an ancient primordial saying, not recognizing the significance thereof. Then Visita, when the savory earth had vanished, for those beings outgrowths appeared in the soil. The manner of the rising up, therefore, thereof was as the springing up of the mushroom. It had color, odor, and taste, even as well-formed ghee or fine butter, so was the color thereof, and even as flawless honeycomb, so was the sweetness thereof. Then those beings began to feast on these outgrowths of the soil, and they, feasting on them, finding food and nourishment in them, continued for a long, long while. And in measure as they thus fed and were thus nourished, so did their bodies grow ever further solid, and the difference in their comeliness further manifest, some becoming well-favored, some ill-favored. Then they that were well-favored despised them that were ill-favored, thinking, we are further comely than they are worse favored than we. And whilst they, through pride in their beauty, thus became vain and conceited, these outgrowths of the soil disappeared. Thereupon creeping plants appeared, and the manner of the growth thereof was as that of the bamboo, and they had color, odor, and taste. Even as well-made ghee or fine butter was, so was the color thereof, even as flawless honeycomb, so was the sweetness thereof. Then Veseta, those beings began to feast on the creepers, and they, feasting on them, feeding on them, nourished by them, continued so for a long, long while. And in measure as they thus fed and were nourished, did their bodies wax further solid, and the divergence in their comeliness increase, so that as before the better favored despised the worse favored. And whilst those through pride in their beauty became vain and conceited, the creepers disappeared. At the disappearance thereof they gathered themselves together and bewailed, saying, verily it was ours, the creeper, now it has vanished away. Alas, and oh me, we have lost. Even so now, when men begin being asked what is the matter, say, alas, and oh me, what we had, that have we lost. They do but follow an ancient primordial saying, not recognizing the significance thereof. Then Veseta, when the creepers had vanished, for those beings rice appeared, ripening in open spaces. No powder had it, and no husk, pure, fragrant, and clean grained. When of an evening they gathered and carried away for supper, then next matin the rice stood ripe and grown again. Where in the matin they gathered and carried away for breakfast, there in the evening it stood ripe and grown again. No break was to be seen where the husks had been broken off. Then those beings feasting on this rice in the clearings, feeding on it, nourished by it, so continued for a long, long while. And in measure as they, thus feeding, went on existing, so did the bodies of those beings become even further solid, and the divergence of in their comeliness further pronounced. In the female appeared the distinctive features of the female, in the male those of the male. Then truly did woman contemplate man too closely, and man woman. In them contemplating over much, the one the other, passion arose, and burning entered their body. They in consequence thereof followed their lusts, and beings, seeing them so doing, threw some sand, some ashes, some cow dung, crying, perish, foul one, how can a being treat a being so? Even so now, when men in certain districts, when a bride is led away, throw either sand or ashes or cow dung, they do but follow an ancient, enduring, primordial form, not recognizing the significance thereof. That which was reckoned unvirtuous at that time by Seta is now reckoned to be virtuous. Those beings who at that time followed their lusts were not allowed to enter village or town, either for a whole month or even for 2 months. And inasmuch as those beings at that time quickly incurred blame for unvirtuousness, they set to work to make huts to conceal just that unvirtuousness. Then Veseta, this occurred to some being of a lazy disposition. Lo, now why do I wear myself out fetching rice for supper in the evening and in the matin for breakfast? What if I were to fetch enough rice for supper and breakfast together? So we gathered at one journey enough rice for the 2 meals together. Then some being came to him and said, Come, benevolent being, let us go rice gathering. That's not wanted, benevolent being. I have fetched rice for the evening and matin meal. Then the former, following his example, and fetched rice for 2 days at once, saying, So much, they say, will about do. Then some other being came up to this one and said, Come, benevolent being, let us go rice gathering. And he, Never mind, benevolent being, I have fetched rice enough for 2 days. And so in like manner they stored up rice enough for 4, and then for 8 days. Now from the time Vesitta that those beings began to feed on hoarded rice, powder enveloped the clean grain, and husk enveloped the grain, and the reaped or cut stems did not grow again. A break became manifest where the reaper had cut, the rice stubble stood in clumps. Then those beings, Vesitta, gathered themselves and bewailed this, saying, Evil customs, sirs, have appeared amongst men, for in the past we were made of mind, we fed on rapture, self-luminous, we traversed the air in abiding loveliness, long the period we so remained. For us, sooner or later, after a long while, the savory earth had arisen over the waters. Color it had, and odor and taste. We set to work to make the earth into lumps and feast on it. And we did so. As we did so, our self-luminance vanished away. When it was gone, moon and soleil became manifest, stars, shapes, and constellations, night and day, the months and half-months, the seasons and the years. We, enjoying the savory earth, feeding on it, nourished by it, continued so for a long while. But since evil and unvirtuous customs became rife amongst us, the savory earth disappeared. When it had ceased, outgrowths of the soil became manifest, clothed with color, odor, and taste. Then we began to enjoy, and fed and nourished thereby. We continued so for a long while. But when evil and unvirtuous customs arose amongst us, these outgrowths disappeared. When they had vanished, creepers appeared, clothed with color, odor, and taste. Then we turned to enjoy, and fed and nourished thereby. We continued so for a long while. But since evil and unvirtuous customs became prevalent amongst us, the creepers also disappeared. When they had ceased, rice appeared, ripening in open spaces, without powder, without husk, pure, fragrant, and clean grained, where we plucked and took away for the evening meal every evening. There next matin it had grown ripe again. Where we plucked and took away for the matin meal, there in the evening it had grown ripe again. There was no break visible. Enjoying this rice, feeding on it, nourished by it, we have so continued a long while. But from evil and unvirtuous customs becoming manifest amongst us, powder has enveloped the clean grain, husk too has enveloped the clean grain, and where we have reaped is no regrowth. A break has come, and the rice stubble stands in clumps. Come now, let us divide off the rice fields and set boundaries thereto. And so they divided off the rice and set up boundaries round it. Now some, being Vesitta of greedy disposition, watching over his own plot, stole another plot and made utilization of it. They took him, and holding him fast, said, Truly, benevolent being, thou hast wrought evil in that, whilst watching thine own plot, thou hast stolen another plot and made utilization of it. See, benevolent being, that thou do not such a thing again. Aye, sirs, he replied, and a second time he did so, and yet a third. And again they took him and admonished him, smote him with the hand, some with clods, some with sticks. With such a beginning Vesitta did stealing appear, and censure and lying and punishment became known. Now those beings Vesitta gathered themselves together and bewailed these things, saying, From our evil deeds, sirs, becoming manifest, inasmuch as stealing, censure, lying, punishment have become known, what if we were to select a certain being who should be wrathful when indignation is right, and who should censure that which should rightly be censured, and should banish him who deserves to be banished? But we will give him in return a proportion of the rice. Then Vesitta, these beings, went to the being amongst them who was the handsomest, the best favored, the most attractive, the most capable, and said to him, Come now, benevolent being, be indignant at that whereat one should rightly be indignant, censure that which should rightly be censured, banish him who deserves to be banished, and we will contribute to thee a proportion of our rice. And he consented and did so, and they gave him a proportion of their rice. Chosen by the whole people, Vesitta is what is meant by Mahasamata. So Mahasamata, the great elect, was the first standing phrase to arise for such a one. Master of the fields is what is meant by Katia. So Katia, noble, was the next expression to arise. He charms the others by Dharma, by what ought to charm is what is meant by Raja. So this was the third standing phrase to arise. Thus, then, Veseta was the origin of this social circle of the nobles according to the ancient primordial phrases by which they were known. Their origin was from amongst those very beings and no others like unto themselves, not unlike, and it took place according to the Dhamma, according to what ought to be, justly, not unfittingly. For Veseta, the Dhamma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. Now it occurred Veseta to some of those beings as follows. Evil deeds, sirs, have become manifest amongst us, inasmuch as stealing, censure, lying, punishment can be noticed, and banishment. Let us now put away from us evil and unvirtuous customs, and they put away from them such customs. They put away behenti, evil, unvirtuous customs. Veseta is what is meant by Brahmins. And thus was it that Brahmins became the earliest standing phrase for those who did so. They, making leaf huts in woodland spots, meditated therein. Extinct for them the burning coal, vanished the smoke, fallen lies, pestle, and clay, gathering of an evening for the evening meal, of a matin for the matin meal. They go down into village and town and royal city seeking food. When they have gotten food, back again in their leaf huts, they meditate. When men saw this, they said, these benevolent beings, having made unto themselves leaf huts in the forest region, meditate therein. For them burning coal is extinct, smoke is known no further, pestle and clay have fallen from their hands. They gather of an evening for the evening meal, of matin for the matin meal, and go down into village and town and royal city seeking food. When they have gotten food, back again in their leaf huts, they meditate. They meditate Jayanti. Veseta is what is meant by the brooding one, Jayaka. Thus was it that this was the second phrase that arose. Now certain of those beings, Veseta, being incapable of enduring this meditation in forest leaf huts, went down and settled on the outskirts of villages and towns, making books. When men saw this, they said, these benevolent beings, being incapable of enduring meditation in forest leaf huts, have gone down and settled on the outskirts of villages and towns, and there they make books. But they cannot meditate. Now these meditate not. Veseta is what is meant by Ajayaka, repeaters of the Vedas. Thus this third phrase for such people came into utilization. At that time they were looked upon as the lowest, now they are thought the best. Such then, Veseta, according to the ancient yea primordial expressions by which they were known, was the origin of the social circle of the Brahmins. The origin was not from just those beings above referred to, beings like unto themselves, not unlike, and it took place according to the Dhamma, according to what ought to be, justly, not unfittingly. For Veseta, the Dhamma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. Now Veseta, there were some others of those beings who, adopting the married state, set on foot various trades. That they, adopting the married state, set on foot various visa, trades, is Vaseta, the meaning of Vesa, tradesfolk. So this word came into utilization as a standing expression for such people. The origin, Veseta, of the social group called the Vesas was in accordance with this ancient yea primordial designation. It was from just those beings above described, beings like unto themselves, not unlike, and it took place in accordance with the Dhamma, according to what ought to be, justly, not unfittingly. For Veseta, the Dhamma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. Now Veseta, those of these beings that remained over took to hunting, but those that live on hunting and such life trifling pursuits is what is meant by Suda, the lowest grade of folk. Thus then, according to the ancient yea primordial expression, is the origin of this social group called Sudas. Their origin was from just those beings above described, beings like unto themselves, not unlike, and it took place according to the Dhamma, according to what ought to be, not unfittingly, namely from those who were not different from other beings, but like them, not unlike them, but by Dhamma, and not through them, not through lack of Dhamma. For Veseta, Dhamma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. Now there came a time, Veseta, when some Kaitya, misprizing his own Dhamma, went forth from home into the homeless life, saying, I will become a recluse. Some Brahmin too did the same, likewise some Vesa and some Suda, each finding some fault in his particular Dhamma. Out of these four groups of circles, Veseta, the company of the recluses, came into being. Their origin was from just these beings like unto themselves, not different, and it took place according to Dhamma, a fitness justly, not unfittingly. For Veseta, Dhamma is the best amongst this folk, both in this life and in the next. Now a Kaitya, Veseta, who has led a bad life in deed, word, and thought, whose views of life are wrong, will, in consequence of his views and deeds, when the body breaks up, be reborn after death in the waste and woeful way, the downfall, purgatory. and a Brahmin 2, a Vesa 2, a Suda 2, who has led a bad life in deed, word, and thought, whose views of life are wrong, will in consequence of his views and deeds, when the body breaks up, be reborn after death in the waste, the woeful way, the downful purgatory. Again, Visita Akaicha or Brahmin or Vesa or Suda, who has led a benevolent life in deed, word, and thought, whose views of life are as they should be, will, in consequence of his views and deeds, when the body breaks up, be reborn after death in a happy, bright world. Again, Veseta Akaicha Brahmin 2, a Vesa 2, a Suda 2, who has lived a life both benevolent and bad in deed, word, and thought, those whose views of life are mixed, will, in consequence of his mixed views and deeds, when the body breaks up, be reborn after death, suffering both happiness and unhappiness. Again, Veseta Akaicha, a Brahmin 2, a Vesa 2, a Suda 2, who is self-restrained in deed, word, and thought, and has followed after the practice of the 7 principles, which are the wings of wisdom, attains to complete extinction of evil in this present life. For Veseta, whosoever of these 4 classes becomes as a bhikshu, an arhat, who has destroyed the intoxicants, who has done that which is behooved him to do, who has laid down the burden, and who has won his own salvation, who has wholly destroyed the fetter of re-becoming, who through knowledge made perfect is free, he is declared chief amongst them in virtue of Dhamma, not in the absence of Dhamma. For Veseta, Dhamma is the best amongst his folk in this life and in the next. Now this verse Veseta was spoken by Brahma, the eternal youth. The Kaitya is the best amongst this folk who put their trust in lineage, but one in wisdom and in virtue clothed is best of all amongst spirits and men. Now this stanza Veseta was well sung and not ill sung by Brahma, the eternal youth, well said and not ill said, full of meaning and not void thereof. I too, Veseta, say the Kaitya is the best amongst his folk who put their trust in lineage. But one in wisdom and in virtue clothed is best of all amongst spirits and men. Thus spake the Exalted One. Pleased at heart, Veseta and Bharadvaja rejoiced in what the Exalted One had said. Dhammapada, the Sukhavagga, 15. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst hostile men we dwell free from hatred. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst the afflicted by craving, amidst afflicted men we dwell free from affliction. Happy indeed we live, free from avarice, amidst the avaricious men we dwell free from avarice. Happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing, feeders on joy shall we be like the radiant angels. Victory begets enmity, the defeated dwell in pain. Happily the peaceful live, discarding both victory and defeat. There is no fire like lust, and no crime like hatred. There is no ill like the aggregates of existence, and no bliss higher than the peace of Nibbana. Hunger is the worst disease, conditioned things the worst suffering. Knowing this as it truly is, the wise realize Nibbana, the highest bliss. Health is the most precious gain, and contentment the greatest wealth. A trustworthy person is the best kinsman, Nibbana the highest bliss. Having savored the taste of solitude and peace of Nibbana, pain-free and stainless, he becomes drinking deep the taste of the bliss of the truth. Benevolent is it to see the noble ones, to live with them is ever blissful. One will always be happy by not encountering fools. Indeed, he who moves in the company of fools grieves, for longing association with fools is ever painful, like partnership with an enemy, but association with the wise is happy, like meeting one's own kinsman. Therefore follow the noble one, who is steadfast, wise, learned, dutiful, and devout. One should follow only such a man, who is truly benevolent and discerning, even as the moon follows the path of the stars. The Gospels, John chapter 15 a 16. I am the true vine, and my Creator is the gardener. God cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, whilst every branch that does bear fruit God prunes, so that it will be even further fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself, it must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Creator's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Creator has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Creator's commands and remain in God's love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay you down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Creator I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Creator will give you. This is my command: love each other. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you: a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin, but now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Creator as well. If I had not done amongst them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated me, both me and my Creator. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law: they hated me without reason. When the Advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Creator, the Spirit of truth who goes out from the Creator, the Spirit will testify about me. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. All this I have told you so that you will not fall away. They will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think they are offering a service to God. They will do such things because they have not known the Creator or me. I have told you this so that when their time comes, you will remember that I warned you about them. I did not tell you this from the beginning because I was with you. But now I am going to God who sent me. None of you asks me, where are you going? Rather, you are filled with grief because I have said these things. But very truly I tell you, it is for your benefit that I am going away. Unless I go away, the Advocate will not come to you. But if I go, I will send the Advocate to you. When the Advocate comes, the Advocate will prove the world to be in the wrong about sin and righteousness and judgment. About sin, because people do not believe in me. About righteousness, because I am going to the Creator, where you can see me no longer. And about judgment, because the prince of this world now stands condemned. I have much further to say to you, further than you can now bear. But when the Advocate, the Spirit of truth, comes, the Spirit of truth will guide you into all the truth. The Spirit will not speak on the Spirit's own. The Spirit will speak only what the Spirit hears, and the Spirit will tell you what is yet to come. The Spirit will glorify me, because it is from me that the Spirit will receive what the Spirit will make known to you. All that belongs to the Creator is mine. That is why I said the Spirit will receive from me what the Spirit will make known to you. Jesus went on to say, in a little while you will see me no further, and then after a little while you will see me. At this, some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying, in a little while you will see me no further, and then after a little while you will see me? And because I am going to the Creator. They kept asking, what does he mean by a little while? We don't understand what he's saying. Jesus saw that they wanted to ask him about this, so he said to them, are you asking one another what I meant when I said, in a little while you will see me no longer, and then after a little while you will see me again, and you will see me? Very truly I tell you, you will weep and grieve whilst the world rejoices. You will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come, but when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. So with you, now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. In that day you will no longer ask me anything. Very truly I tell you, my Creator will give you whatever you ask in my name. Until now you have not asked for anything in my name. Ask and you will receive, and your joy will be complete. Though I have been speaking figuratively, a time is coming when I will no longer utilize this kind of language, but will tell you plainly about my Creator. In that day you will ask in my name, and I am not saying that I will ask the Creator on your behalf. No, the Creator by God loves you because you have loved me, and have believed that I came from God. I came from the Creator and entered the world. Now I am leaving the world and going back to the Creator. Then Jesus' disciples said, Now you are speaking clearly and without figures of speech. Now we can see that you know all things and that you do not even need to have anyone ask you questions. This makes us believe that you came from God. Do you now believe? Jesus replied. A time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will be scattered, each to your own home. You will leave me alone, yet I am not alone, for my Creator is with me. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Quran, Surah Al-Waqiyah, Surah Al-Hadid, 56, 57. Surah Al-Waqiyah. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. When the event inevitable cometh to pass, then will no soul entertain falsehood concerning its coming. Many will it bring low, many will it exalt. When the earth shall be shaken to its depths, and the mountains shall be crumbled to atoms, becoming dust scattered abroad, and ye shall be sorted out into three classes. Then there will be the companions of the right hand. What will be the companions of the right hand? And the companions of the left hand. What will be the companions of the left hand? And those foremost in faith will be foremost in the hereafter. These will be those nearest to Allah, in gardens of bliss, a number of people from those of old, and a few from those of later times. They will be on thrones encrusted with gold and precious stones, reclining on them, facing each other. Round about them will serve youths of perpetual freshness, with goblets, shining beakers, and cups filled out of clear flowing fountains. No after ache will they receive therefrom, nor will they suffer intoxication. And with fruits any that they may select, and the flesh of fowls any that they may desire. And there will be companions with beautiful, big, and lustrous eyes, like unto pearls well guarded, a reward for the deeds of their past life. No frivolity will they hear therein, nor any taint of ill, only the saying, peace, peace. The companions of the right hand, what will be the companions of the right hand? They will be amongst lote trees without thorns, amongst tall trees with flowers or fruits piled one above another, in shade long extended, by water flowing constantly, and fruit in abundance, whose season is not limited, nor supply forbidden, and on thrones of dignity raised high. We have created their companions of special creation, and made them virgin, pure, and undefiled, beloved by nature, equal in age, for the companions of the right hand, a benevolent number from those of old, and a benevolent number from those of later times. The companions of the left hand, what will be the companions of the left hand? They will be in the midst of a fierce blast of fire, and in boiling water, and in the shades of black smoke. Nothing will there be to refresh nor to please, for that they were wont to be indulged before that in wealth and luxury, and persisted obstinately in wickedness supreme. And they used to say, what, when we die and become dust and bones, shall we then indeed be raised up again? We and our fathers of old say, yea, those of old and those of latter times. And all will certainly be gathered together for the meeting appointed for a day well known. Then will ye truly, O ye that go wrong, and treat truth as falsehood, ye will surely taste of the tree of Zakum. Then will ye fill your insides therewith, and drink boiling water on top of it. Indeed, ye shall drink like diseased camels raging with thirst. Such will be their entertainment on the day of requital. It is we who have created you. Why will ye not witness the truth? Do ye then see the human seed that ye throw out? Is it ye who created, or are we the creators? We have decreed death to be your common lot, and we are not to be frustrated, from changing your forms and creating you again in forms that ye know not. And ye certainly know already the first form of creation. Why then do ye not celebrate Allah's praises? See ye the seed that ye sow in the ground? Is it ye that cause it to grow, or are we the cause? Were it our will, we could crumble it to dry powder, and ye would be left in wonderment, saying, we are indeed left with debts for nothing. Indeed are we shut out of the fruits of our labor. See ye the water which ye drink? Do ye bring it down in rain from the cloud, or do we? Were it our will, we could make it salt and unpalatable. Then why do ye not give thanks? See ye the fire which ye kindle? Is it ye who grow the tree which feeds the fire, or do we grow it? We have made it a memorial of our handiwork, and an article of comfort and convenience for the denizens of deserts. Then celebrate with praises the name of thy Lord, the Supreme. Further, I call to witness the setting of the stars, and that is indeed a mighty adjuration, if ye but knew. That this is indeed a Quran most honorable, in a book well guarded, which none shall touch but those who are clean, a revelation from the Lord of the worlds, Is it such a message that ye would hold in light esteem? And have ye made it your livelihood that ye should declare it false? Then why do ye not intervene when the soul of the dying man reaches the throat, and ye the while sit looking on? But we are nearer to him than ye, and ye see not. Then why do ye not, if ye are exempt from future account, call back the soul if ye are true in the claim of independence? Then, if he be of those nearest to Allah, there is for him rest and satisfaction and a garden of delights. And if he be of the companions of the right hand, for him is the salutation, be peace be unto thee, from the companions of the right hand. And if he be of those who treat truth as falsehood, who go wrong, for him is entertainment with boiling water and burning in hell fire. Verily, this is the very truth, and certainly, so celebrate with praises the name of thy Lord the Supreme. Surah Al-Hadid. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Whatever is in the heavens and on earth, let it declare the praises and glory of Allah, for Allah is exalted in might, the wise. To Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth. It is Allah who gives life and death, and Allah has power over all things. Allah is the first and the last, the evident and the eminent, and Allah has full knowledge of all things. Allah it is who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and is further firmly established on the throne of authority. Allah knows what enters within the earth and what comes forth out of it, what comes down from heaven and what mounts up to it, and Allah is with you wheresoever ye may be, and Allah sees well all that ye do. To Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and all affairs are referred back to Allah. Allah merges night into day, and Allah merges day into night, and Allah has full knowledge of the secrets of all hearts. Believe in Allah and Allah's apostle, and spend in charity out of the substance whereof Allah has made you heirs. For those of you who believe and spend in charity, for them is a great reward. What cause have ye why ye should not believe in Allah? And the messenger invites you to believe in your Lord, and has indeed taken your covenant, if ye are men of faith. Allah is the one who sends to Allah's servant manifest signs, that Allah may lead you from the depths of darkness into light, and verily Allah is to you most kind and merciful. And what cause have ye why ye should not spend in the cause of Allah? For to Allah belongs the heritage of the heavens and the earth. Not equal amongst you are those who spent freely and fought before the victory with those who did so later. Those are higher in rank and those who spent freely and fought afterwards, but to all has Allah promised a benevolent reward, and Allah is well acquainted with all that ye do. Who is he that will loan to Allah a beautiful loan? For Allah will increase it manifold to his credit, and he will have besides a liberal reward. One day shalt thou see the believing men and the believing women, how their light runs forward before them, and by their right hands their greeting will be benevolent news for this day, gardens beneath which flow rivers, to dwell therein for aye. This is indeed the highest achievement. One day will the hypocrites, men and women, say to the believers, Wait for us, let us borrow a light from your light. It will be said, Turn ye back to your rear, then seek a light where ye can. So a wall will be put up betwixt them, with a gate therein. Within it will be mercy throughout, and without it all alongside will be wrath and punishment. Those without will call out, Where were we not with you? The others will reply, True, but ye led yourselves into temptation. Ye looked forward to our ruin. Ye doubted Allah's promise, and your false desires deceived you, until there issued the command of Allah, and the deceiver deceived you in respect of Allah. This day shall no ransom be accepted of you, nor of those who rejected Allah. Your abode is the fire, that is the proper place to claim you, and an evil refuge it is. Has not the time arrived for the believers that their hearts in all humility should engage in the remembrance of Allah and on the truth which has been revealed to them, and that they should not become like those to whom was given revelation aforetime, but long ages passed over them, and their hearts grew hard? For many amongst them are rebellious transgressors. Know ye all that Allah giveth life to the earth after its death. Already have we shown the signs plainly to you, that ye may learn wisdom. For those who give in charity, men and women, and loan to Allah a beautiful loan, it shall be increased manifold to their credit, and they shall have besides a liberal reward. And those who believe in Allah and Allah's apostles, they are the sincere lovers of truth, and the witnesses who testify in the eyes of their Lord. They shall have their reward and their light. But those who reject Allah and deny our signs, they are the companions of hellfire. Know ye all that the life of this world is but play and amusement, pomp and mutual boasting, and multiplying in rivalry amongst yourselves, riches and children. Here is a similitude. How rain and the growth which it brings forth delight the hearts of the tillers. Soon it withers, thou wilt see it grow yellow, then it becomes dry and crumbles away. But in the hereafter is a penalty severe for the devotees of wrong, and forgiveness from Allah and Allah's benevolent pleasure for the devotees of Allah. And what is the life of this world but treasures and chattels of deception? Be ye foremost in seeking forgiveness from your Lord, and a garden of bliss, the width that whereof is as the width of heaven and earth, prepared for those who believe in Allah and Allah's apostles. That is the grace of Allah, which Allah bestows on whom Allah pleases, and Allah is the Lord of grace abounding. No misfortune can happen on earth or in your souls, but is recorded in a decree before we bring it into existence. That is truly easy for Allah. In order that ye may not despair over matters that pass you by, nor exult over favors bestowed upon you, for Allah loveth not any vainglorious boaster. Such persons as are covetous and commend covetousness to men, and if any turn back from Allah's way, verily Allah is free of all needs, worthy of all praise. We sent aforetime our apostles with clear signs, and sent down with them the book and the balance of right and wrong, that men may stand forth in justice. And we sent down iron, in which is material for a mighty war, as well as many benefits for mankind, that Allah may test who it is that will help unseen, Allah and Allah's apostle. For Allah is full of strength, exalted in might, and able to enforce Allah's will. And we set Noah and Abraham, and established in their line prophethood and revelation, and some of them were on right guidance, but many of them became rebellious transgressors. Then in their wake we followed them up with others of our apostles. We sent after them Jesus the Son of Mary, and bestowed on him the gospel, and we ordained in the hearts of those who followed him compassion and mercy. But the monasticism which they invented for themselves we did not prescribe for them. We commanded only the seeking for the benevolent pleasure of Allah, but that they did not foster as they should have done. Yet we bestowed on those amongst them who believed their due reward, but many of them are rebellious transgressors. O ye that believe, fear Allah, and believe in Allah's messenger, and Allah will bestow on you a double portion of Allah's mercy. Allah will provide for you a light by which ye shall walk straight in your path, and Allah will forgive you your past, for Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. That the people of the book may know that they have no power whatever over the grace of Allah, that Allah's grace is entirely in Allah's hand, to bestow it on whomsoever Allah wills, for Allah is the Lord of grace abounding. The Souls of Black Folk, Chapter 1. Of our spiritual strivings. O water, voice of my heart, crying in the sand all night long, crying with a griefful cry. As I lie and listen, I cannot understand the voice of my heart in my side, or the voice of the sea. O water, crying for rest, is it I, is it I? All night long the water is crying to me. Unresting water, there shall never be rest, till the last moon drop and the last tide fail, and the fire of the end begin to burn in the west. And the heart shall be weary, and the wanderer, and cry like the sea, all life long crying without avail, as the water all night long is crying to me. Between me and the other world there is ever an unasked question, unasked by some through feelings of delicacy, by others through the difficulty of rightly framing it. All nevertheless flutter round it. They approach me in a half-hesitant sort of way, eye me curiously or compassionately, and then, instead of saying directly, "How does it feel to be a problem?" They say, I know an excellent colored man in my town, or I fought at Mechanicsville, or do not these southern outrages make your blood boil? At these I smile, or am interested, or reduce the boiling to a simmer, as the occasion may require. To the true question, how does it feel to be a problem, I answer seldom a word. And yet being a problem is a strange experience, peculiar even for one who has never been anything else, save perhaps in babyhood and in Europe. It is in the early days of rollicking boyhood that the revelation first bursts upon one, all in a day, as it were. I remember well when the shadow swept across me. I was a little thing away up in the hills of New England, where the dark Housatonic winds between Hoosac and Taghanic to the sea. In a wee wooden schoolhouse, something put it into the boys' and girls' heads to buy gorgeous visiting cards, 10 cents a package, and exchange. The exchange was merry till one girl, a tall newcomer, refused my card. Refused it peremptorily with a glance. Then it dawned upon me with a certain suddenness that I was different from the others, or like mayhap in heart and life and longing, but shut out from their world by a vast veil. I had thereafter no desire to tear down that veil, to creep through. I held all beyond it in common contempt, and lived above it in a region of blue sky and gray wandering shadows. That sky was bluest when I could beat my mates at examination time, or beat them at a foot race, or even beat their stringy heads. Alas, with the years all this fine contempt began to fade, for the worlds I longed for, and all their dazzling opportunities, were theirs, not mine. But they should not keep these prizes, I said. Some, all I would wrest from them. Just how I would do it, I could never decide, but reading law by healing the sick, by telling the wonderful tales that swam in my head, some way. With other black boys, the strife was not so fiercely sunny. Their youth shrunk into tasteless sycophancy, or into silent hatred of the pale world about them, and mocking distrust of everything white, or wasted itself in a bitter cry, why did God make me an outcast and a stranger in mine own house? The shades of the prison house closed round about us all, walls straight and stubborn to the whitest, but relentlessly narrow, tall and unscalable to sons of night who must plod darkly on in resignation, or beat unveiling palms against the stone, or steadily, half hopelessly, watch the streak of blue above. After the Egyptian and Indian, the Greek and Roman, the Teuton and Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self-consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, the sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro. Two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. The history of the American Negro is the history of this strife, this longing to attain self-conscious manhood, to merge his double self into a better and truer self. In this merging, he wishes neither of the older selves to be lost. He would not Africanize America, for America has too much to teach the world and Africa. He would not bleach his Negro soul in a flood of white Americanism, for he knows that Negro blood has a message for the world. He simply wishes to make it possible for a man to be both a Negro and an American, without being cursed and spit upon by his fellows, without having the doors of opportunity closed roughly in his face. This then is the end of his striving, to be a co-worker in the kingdom of culture, to escape both death and isolation, to husband and utilize his best powers and his latent genius. These powers of body and mind have in the past been strangely wasted, dispersed, or forgotten. The shadow of a mighty Negro past flits through the tale of Ethiopia, the shadowy, and of Egypt, the Sphinx. Throughout history, the powers of single black men flash here and there like falling stars, and die sometimes before the world has rightly gauged their brightness. Here in America, in the few days since emancipation, the black man's turning hither and thither in hesitant and doubtful striving has often made his very strength to lose effectiveness, to seem like absence of power, like weakness. And yet it is not weakness, it is the contradiction of double aims. The double aim struggle of the black artisan, on the one hand to escape white contempt for a nation of mere hewers of wood and drawers of water, and on the other hand to plow and nail and dig for a poverty-stricken horde, could only result in making him a poor craftsman, for he had but half a heart in either cause. By the poverty of and ignorance of his people, the Negro minister or doctor was tempted towards quackery and demagogy, and by the criticism of the other world towards ideals that made him ashamed of his lowly tasks. That the would-be black savant was confronted by the paradox that the knowledge his people needed was a twice-told tale to his white neighbors, whilst the knowledge which would teach the white world was Greek to his own flesh and blood. The innate love of harmony and beauty that set the ruder souls of his people a dancing and a singing raised but confusion and doubt in the soul of the black artist. For the beauty revealed to him was the sole beauty of a race which his larger audience despised, and he could not articulate the message of another people. This waste of double aims, this seeking to satisfy two unreconciled ideals, has wrought sad havoc with the courage and faith and deeds of 10,000 people, has set them off often wooing false deities and invoking false means of salvation, and at times has even seemed about to make them ashamed of themselves. Away back in the days of bondage, they thought to see in one divine event the end of all doubt and disappointment. Few men ever worshipped freedom with half such unquestioning faith as did the American Negro for 2 centuries. To him, so much as he thought and dreamed, slavery was indeed the sum of all villainies, the cause of all sorrow, the root of all prejudice. Emancipation was the key to a promised land of sweeter beauty than ever stretched before the eyes of wearied Israelites. In song and exhortation swelled one refrain: liberty in his tears and curses. The God he implored had freedom in his right hand, in God's right hand. At last it came suddenly, fearfully, like a dream. With one wild carnival of blood and passion came the message in his own plaintive cadences. Shout, O children, shout, you're free, for God has brought you liberty. Years have passed away since then, 10, 20, 40 years of natural life, 40 years of renewal and development, and yet the swarthy specter sits in its accustomed seat at the nation's feast. In vain do we cry to this our vastest social problem, take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble. The nation has not yet found peace from its sins. The freedman has not yet found in freedom his promised land. Whatever of benevolence may have come in these years of change, the shadow of a deep disappointment rests upon the Negro people, a disappointment all the further bitter because the unattained ideal was unbounded, save by the simple ignorance of a lowly people. The first decade was merely a prolongation of the vain search for freedom, the boon that seemed ever barely to elude their grasp, like a tantalizing will-o'-the-wisp, maddening and misleading the headless host. The Holocaust of war, the terrors of the Ku Klux Klan, the lies of carpetbaggers, the disorganization of industry, and the contradictory advice of friends and foes left the bewildered serf with no new watchword beyond the old cry for freedom. As the time flew, however, he began to grasp a new idea. The ideal of liberty demanded for its attainment powerful means, and these the 15th Amendment gave him. The ballot, which before he had looked upon as a visible sign of freedom, he now regarded as the chief means of gaining and perfecting the liberty with which war had partially endowed him. And why not? Had not votes made war and emancipated millions? Had not votes enfranchised the freedmen? Was anything impossible to a power that had done all this? A million black men started with renewed zeal to vote themselves into the kingdom. So the decade flew away. The revolution of 1876, 1866 came and left the half-free serf weary, wandering, but still inspired. Slowly but steadily in the following years, a new vision became gradually to replace the dream of political power, a powerful movement, the rise of another ideal to guide the unguided, another pillar of fire by night after a clouded day. It was the ideal of book learning, the curiosity born of compulsory ignorance to know and test the power of the Kabbalistic letters of the white man, the longing to know. Here at last seemed to have been discovered the mountain path to Canaan, longer than the highway of emancipation and law, steep and rugged, but straight, leading to the heights high enough to overlook life. Up the new path the advanced guard toiled, slowly, heavily, doggedly. Only those who have watched and guided the faltering feet, the misty minds, the dull understandings of the dark pupils of these schools know how faithfully, how piteously this people strove to learn. It was weary work. The cold statistician wrote down the inches of progress here and there, noted also where here and there a foot had slipped or someone had fallen. To the tired climbers, the horizon was ever dark, the mists were often cold, the Canaan was always dim and distantly away. If, however, the vistas disclosed as yet no goal, no resting place, little but flattery and criticism, the journey at least gave leisure for reflection and self-examination. It changed the child of emancipation to the youth with dawning self-consciousness, self-realization, self-respect. In those somber forests of his striving, his own soul rose before him, and he saw himself, darkly as through a veil, and yet he saw in himself some faint revelation of his power, of his mission. He began to have a dim feeling that to attain his place in the world he must be himself and not another. For the first time he sought to analyze the burden he bore upon his back, that dead weight of social degradation partially masked behind a half-named Negro problem. He felt his poverty. Without a cent, without a home, without land, tools, or savings, he had entered into competition with rich, landed, skilled neighbors. To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the very bottom of hardships. He felt the weight of his ignorance, not simply of letters, but of life, of business, of the humanities. The accumulated sloth and shirking and awkwardness of decades and centuries shackled his hands and feet, nor was his burden all poverty and ignorance. The red stain of bastardy, which 2 centuries of systemic legal defilement of Negro women had stamped upon his race, meant not only the loss of ancient African chastity, but also the hereditary weight of a mass of corruption from white adulterers, threatening almost the obliteration of the Negro home. A people thus handicapped ought not to be asked to race with the world, but rather allowed to give all its time and thought to its own social problems. But alas, while sociologists gleefully count his bastards and his prostitutes, the very soul of the toiling, sweating black man is darkened by the shadow of a vast despair. Men call the shadow prejudice and learnedly explain it as the natural defense of culture against barbarism, learning against ignorance, purity against crime, the higher against the lower races, to which the Negro cries Amen, and swears that to so much of this strange prejudice as is founded on just homage to civilization, culture, righteousness, and progress, he humbly bows and meekly does obeisance. But before that nameless prejudice that leaps beyond all this, he stands helpless, dismayed, and well nigh speechless. Before that personal disrespect and mockery, the ridicule and systemic humiliation, the distortion of fact and wanton license of fancy, the cynical ignoring of the better and the boisterous welcoming of the worse, the all-pervading desire to inculcate disdain for everything black, from Toussaint to the devil. Before this, there arises a sickening despair that would disarm and discourage any nation, save the black host to whom discouragement is an unwritten word. But the facing of so vast a prejudice could not but bring the inevitable self-questioning, self-disparagement, and lowering of ideals which ever accompany repression and breed in an atmosphere of contempt and hate. Whisperings and portents came borne upon the 4 winds. Lo, we are diseased and dying, cried the dark hosts. We cannot write, our voting is vain. What need of education, since we must always cook and serve? And the nation echoed and enforced this self-criticism, saying, be content to be servants and nothing further. What need of higher culture for half men? Away with the black man's ballot by force or fraud, and behold the suicide of a race. Nevertheless, out of the evil came something of benevolence. The further careful adjustment of education to genuine life, the clearer perception of the Negro social responsibilities, and the sobering realization of the meaning of progress. So dawned the time of Sturm and Drang, storm and stress. Today rocks our little boat on the mad waters of the world sea. There is within and without the sound of conflict, the burning of body and rending of soul. Inspiration strives with doubt and faith with vain questionings. The bright ideals of the past, physical freedom, political power, the training of brains, and the training of hands, all these in turn have waxed and waned until even the last grows dim and overcast. Are they all wrong, all false? No, not that, but each alone was oversimple and incomplete. The dreams of a credulous race childhood, or the fond imaginings of the other world which does not know and does not want to know our power. To be genuinely true, all these ideals must be melted and welded into one. The training of the schools we need today further than ever, the training of deft hands, quick eyes and ears, and above all the broader, deep, higher culture of gifted minds and pure hearts. The power of the ballot we need in sheer defense, self-defense, else what shall save us from a second slavery? Freedom, too, the long-sought we still seek, the freedom of life and limb, the freedom to work and think, the freedom to love and aspire. Work, culture, liberty, all these we need, but singly, but not together. not successively, but together, each growing and aiding each and all striving towards the vaster ideal that swims before the Negro people, the ideal of human brotherhood, gained through the unifying ideal of race, the ideal of fostering and developing the traits and talents of the Negro, not in opposition to or contempt for other races, but rather in large conformity to the greater ideals of the American Republic, in order that someday on American soil two world races may give each to each those characteristics both so sadly lack. We, the darker ones, come even now not altogether empty-handed. There are today no truer exponents of the pure human spirit of the Declaration of Independence than the American Negroes. There is no true American music but the wild, sweet melodies of the Negro slave. The American fairy tales and folklore are native and African, and all in all, we black men seem the sole oasis of simple faith and reverence in a dusty desert of dollars and smartness. Will America be poor if she replaces her brutal, dyspeptic blundering with light-hearted but determined Negro humility, or her coarse and cruel wit with loving, jovial, benevolent humor, or her vulgar music with the soul of the sorrow songs? Merely a concrete test of the underlying principles of the great republic is the Negro problem, and the spiritual striving of the freedmen's sons is the travail of souls whose burden is almost beyond the measure of their strength, but who bear it in the name of an historic race, in the name of the land of their fars, and in the name of human opportunity. And now what I have briefly sketched in large outline, let me on coming pages tell again in many ways, with loving emphasis and deeper detail, that men may listen to the striving in the souls of black folk. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. 道可道非常道，名可名非常名。Já Rastafari. Deus nos que es in cielo, santificita nomen tuum, vaheguru salam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher tzavanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'suk b'dvar Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, barei per yagafim. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamas tu sabjagatehe, sabe sata bavantu sukitata. Vagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amani. Fikiri nesilami, chinda dam panamin, liabav me womanjikam. Ubuntu shabono fakitka. Shishim. Como senira domo arigato pilama yela mogatako takodoko shingun gomenagan. God, we thank you for all your blessings. Ata jamya yata afalami. Mado, Oho, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie. Respect and honor to Her Majesty Wise Aramanan. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim Jah. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari.